On September the 29th, the liturgical feast of the Holy Archangels is celebrated. St. Michael, St. Raphael and St. Gabriel. We know a little about their role in history. September, a month full of festivals and pilgrims in the Holy Land. The differences in culture and religion are not an obstacle to the displays of coexistence and respect. The third meeting of the Scientific Committee of the Terra Sancta Museum took place in Jerusalem. Work sessions and visits preparing for the opening of the final section of the museum. In the Holy Land, Acre is remembered in a particular way because it is the place where St. Francis visited between 1219 and 1220. In this first part, through the words of Father Giuseppe Gaffurini, we retrace the sanctuaries of the architect Barluzzi, work that immediately expresses the sense of mystery. On September 29th, the Church celebrates the liturgical feast of the Holy Archangels throughout the world. In the scriptures, the heavenly messengers played a major role, from the delivery of the Torah on the Sinai to the events narrated in the Gospel of St. Michael, Prince of the Celestial Militia, and whose name means one who is like God, is very revered on Mount Gargano in Italy. According to tradition, in the 5th century, the Archangel would appear to a bishop after a mysterious incident in which a bull had attacked his pastor. Saint Raphael, which means God's healing, appears in the Old Testament in the book of Tobit in some beautiful passages that narrate how he restored the sight of the pious Tobit and accompanied his son Tobias on his journey until he met Sarah and married her. Saint Gabriel is, however, remembered in a special way in Nazareth, in the Basilica of the Annunciation, because it was there that, according to tradition, the Archangel announced to Mary that she would be the mother of the Saviour. But who was this angel whose name means God is my strength? He is quoted in the prophecies of Daniel, announced the birth of John the Baptist, and is known as the bearer of divine messages.
Questo è molto importante perché l'Arcangelo Gabriele è l'annunciatore non di se stesso.
It is very important because the Archangel Saint Gabriel announces not himself his own will, but the will of God. In Saint Gabriel we find something that is so lacking for us Christians, the docility to do the will of God. He is docile and does not ask God, "You order me to deliver a message, but is it right or wrong?" The angel does not question the will of God.
È giusto, non è giusto, no. Gli angeli non mettono in discussione la volontà di Dio.
Another announcement was even more significant. During the encounter of the angel with the Virgin Mary, the yes that would forever change the history of humanity. Stemming from his dialogue, the prayer of the Angelus would be born. One of the best-known prayers of the Church is recited every day at 6 in the morning, at noon and at 6 in the afternoon by the faithful from all over the world. Every day at noon, the Franciscan friars solemnly recite this prayer at the Basilica of the Annunciation in front of the Cave of the Proclamation. The Church celebrates this feast because each of us has a special protection, which we have received not because we deserve it, but because God grants us to be accompanied in His grace. The first precise news on the Angelus Domini dates back to 1269, when Sant Bonaventura of Bagnoregio was Superior General of the Friars Minor and introduced the greeting to the Virgin Mary during the nights of a general chapter. The morning schedule was incorporated into a synod which took place in Cologne at the start of the 15th century, while the midday prayer was inserted after the King of France, Louis XVI, asked Pope Sixtus IV that 300 days of indulgence should be granted to those who, in that hour, had recited with great devotion 3 Hail Marys for the peace and unity of the kingdom. In the Islamic tradition, which preserves elements of Judaism and Christianity, the angels are pure spirits, with the task of documenting the good and bad deeds of men in view of the final judgment. But at the same time, they do not cease to implore God's mercy upon man. The liturgical feast of the Archangels falls close to the feast of the guardian angels on October the 2nd. an opportunity to recognize that God sends his messengers to guide and inspire each one of us on his journey and protect us from all evil. In the Holy Land, the month of September is full of feasts, and the number of pilgrims has been remarkable. Through Jaffa Gate, one of the entrances to the old city of Jerusalem, Jews arrived for the Jewish holidays, but also thousands of Christians who visit the sanctuaries. The differences in culture and religion are not an obstacle to the displays of coexistence and respect. Although Jerusalem is the city with the largest number of visitors, we find many groups throughout Galilee. One of the characteristics of these pilgrims is surely their contagious joy. The groups come from different countries and each with their own characteristics. In September, the Terra Sancta magazine in Portuguese promoted its first pilgrimage with the theme God speaks and makes an alliance with his people. The Bible scholars of the Studium Biblicum Franciscanum have collaborated to elaborate on biblical texts, starting from Brother Eugenio Alliata, who began the pilgrimage creating a great experience with the group in the desert. The summer heat did not discourage the pilgrims in their ascent to the Mount of Temptation in Jericho. The conference held by Brother Giorgio Vigna was on the subject Shema Israel, Listen to Israel, while the rector of the Basilica of the Annunciation, Brother Bruno Variano, presented the excavations of the ancient village of Nazareth where the Holy Family lived. For the group, it was a profound pilgrimage which they experienced through their visits to the holy sites.
This is my 8th pilgrimage to the Holy Land, and my heart fills with joy when I hear the call of the psalmist. I was glad when they said unto me, Let us go into the house of the Lord. And it is a joy that I wish on all those who came with us, that they would be flooded with this joy, with this glory, and who are able to experience and walk in the footsteps of Jesus and Mary, and touch the roots of their faith. Even more, thanks to the Studium Biblicum, with whom we are creating an experience together. It is an opportunity to see geographically as well as through archaeology all the discoveries that prove our faith. It is a grace of God.
Todos os achados que comprovam a nossa fé.
Father Vitor Raphael, on a pilgrimage with a group from Portugal, recalls the words of Paul VI.
Como dizia Paulo VI, os lugares santos são o quinto evangelho e como os evangelhos têm sempre novidades.
The holy sites are the fifth gospel, as Paul VI defined it. And just like the gospels, they always have something new. Every pilgrimage is unique, first of all because we discover new things, and also because the pilgrims are different, and this group is very united. It is important to bring pilgrims to the Holy Land and to continue to visit the holy sites. We know that even the first Christian communities came on pilgrimage, and still today these holy places are visited by Christian pilgrims who come here.
Hoje, estes lugares santos estão vivos porque os peregrinos e os cristãos vêm cá.
From Sunday the 23rd to Wednesday the 26th of September, the Custody of the Holy Land hosted the third meeting of the Scientific Committee of the Terra Sancta Museum, a session that began with the discovery of the artistic heritage of Bethlehem, a Christian heritage that will be evaluated in the future museum.
The story of mother of pearl production by the Bethlehemites goes back to the minimum of 500 years. So to have a room in that future museum is extremely essential and crucial, to my opinion, because it will shed a light and reveal the truth about the connection between the locals and the custody.
The plenary assemblies of the committee have therefore allowed to present the progress of the museography and the architectural diagnosis of the museum sections. We are between the first phase, which is that of the preliminary design of the scenography, and the phase of the project itself, in which we will really enter into the details of each constituent element, from windows, lighting to the conservation of works. A profound reflection that was conducted on the two paths that will be proposed in this new final section of the Terra Sancta Museum. I think this section will be very popular among the public. The path that has been studied is very precise and very convincing, and tells the story of each object. It is an itinerary that addresses a varied public, Catholics but also Protestants, Orthodox, Jews and Muslims. The thematic work sessions were on the committee's agenda, especially for the forthcoming catalogue publication, From Vestments, Mother of Pearl and Goldsmiths, which will offer the real immersion in the heart of the Terra Sancta Museum collections.
El capítulo de platería, de orfebrería, es muy importante en la exposición.
Goldsmithing is very important in the exhibition to be held in the future museum. The reason I am here is because, with humility, I have studied goldsmithery for many years, more than 50, and I have taught goldsmithery at the University of Madrid. There are other specialists, such as Paulus Reiner, who comes from Kunsthistorischen Museum in Vienna, who will study other pieces from Central Europe, Germany, Austria, Hungary.
Otras piezas que tienen origen centroeuropeo, alemán, austriaco, húngaro, etc., de Centro Europa.
At the end of this work session, the committee was able to disclose the new archaeological wing of the Terra Sancta Museum, inaugurated last June.
Ici, on voit des objets absolument inconnus.
We see objects that are absolutely unknown and that have an exceptional archaeological and aesthetic quality, and we have the impression of rediscovering a place. The next step of the museum, since we chose the objects that will be presented, is the time to think about the museography, inspired by what has been done to give visitors the idea of continuity. It is absolutely essential. For the opening date, we have chosen a symbolic date. We would like it to be for the Feast of St. Francis 2020, that is, the 4th of October 2020.
2020, c'est-à-dire le 4 octobre 2020.
Acre, a millenary city whose excavations indicate an age dating back to about 3,000 years BC. The first citations of the place are contained in Egyptian texts of the 19th century BC, when the Promised Land was divided by drawing lots among the tribes of Israel. Acre was attributed to the tribe of Aser. However, the Israelites could not conquer it. Because of its strategic coastal position, this town was continuously inhabited by many peoples over the centuries. The Christian presence is attested to it. At the end of the year 58 of the Christian era, when Paul and his companions, on their return from their third missionary journey from Tyre, left for Ptolemais, the name given to Acre by the Greeks as described in the book of the Acts of the Apostles. Here, they met the local Christian brothers and stayed one day, and then headed to Caesarea the following day. Close to the Feast of St. Francis on the 4th of October, Acre is remembered in a special way because it is the place where the saint visited between 1219 and 1220 after meeting the Sultan Malek el-Kamel in Damietta in Egypt. Starting from this era, the convent of Acre became the seat of the Franciscan province by the sea. After the invasion of the Mamelukes, with stories of the martyrdom of about 30,000 Christians in Acre, including friars from the order of Friars Minor and Poor Clares, it was only in 1620 that it was possible to re-establish a Franciscan presence in the city. In 1737, near the lighthouse and overlooking the sea, the Church of St. John the Baptist was built, which now houses the parish of the small Roman Catholic community. Signs of the legacy and life of the poor man of Assisi that have always been attracted and continues to attract all generations.
Aquí en Acre, como nos dedicamos a locais,
Here in Acre, we dedicate ourselves to the local population. So dialogue is that of spirituality with Muslims and even Christians of different denominations. We must always be ready to meet people and dialogue. Here, for example, school children want some explanations, and not just about the church, but also about life, our lives and what we do.
Algumas explicações. Então, não somente como explicação da igreja, mas também pouco de vida, nossa vida e que fazemos aqui, sim.
Currently, Acre has about 50,000 inhabitants, a quarter of which are Arabs, mostly Muslims. Of this totality, 2.5% are Christian, most of them Melkite, Greek Catholic. Historical signs can still be seen in the old part of the city, a place to enjoy beautiful landscapes and even relax while fishing.
Pilgrims who in recent decades have come to the Holy Land to retrace the footsteps of Jesus and visit the places where Jesus Christ lived the mysteries of his earthly life have the grace to be able to touch with their hands and to be able to celebrate in the very places where Jesus lived them. The pilgrims then leave Galilee and descend toward Judea, crossing the Jordan Valley, and arrive at the site where Jesus was baptized with John. They renew their baptismal promises. Then on to celebrate the Eucharist, they enter Jericho, going to the sanctuary of the Good Shepherd, the Franciscan parish of Jericho that remembers all the steps of Jesus, the healing of the blind man, Zacchaeus.
Incontra nuovamente I suoi discepoli e assegna a Pietro il ministero di pascere la sua chiesa.
A climb up Mount Tabor to experience the transfiguration of Jesus, enjoy the beautiful view, and see the plain of Galilee and the surrounding borders. Visit Cana, where you can renew your marriage vows. Here Jesus sanctifies Christian marriage with the first miracle that turned water into wine.
I pellegrini poi lasciano la Galilea e scendono verso
The pilgrims then leave Galilee and descend towards Judea, crossing the Jordan Valley, and arrive at the site where Jesus was baptized by John. They renew their baptismal promises. Then on to celebrate the Eucharist, they enter Jericho, going on to the sanctuary of the Good Shepherd, the Franciscan parish of Jericho that remembers all the steps of Jesus, the healing of the blind man, Zacchaeus. Passing through Bethany, the house of friendship, and the site of the tomb of his friend Lazarus, then to the shrine of Bethphage that remembers the spot where Jesus climbs on the donkey and proceeds to enter Jerusalem, finding yourself on the Mount of Olives and the sanctuary of Dominus Flevit, from where you can see the most beautiful panorama of Jerusalem, the same view that overwhelmed Jesus and made him weep.
Ma un pianto ben più amaro attende Gesù.
However, further agony awaits Jesus a few hundred meters lower, in the sanctuary of Gethsemane that includes both the Garden of Gethsemane, where Jesus withdrew to the side to pray with Peter, James and John, the same brethren who had accompanied him onto the mountain of the Transfiguration, and the rock upon which alone he will weep tears of blood and abandon himself to the will of his Father, to the kiss of the traitor, and to the will of men, who will bring him to the flagellation the next day and sentence him to be crucified.
Lo porteranno il giorno dopo alla flagellazione e a caricarlo della croce.
The flagellation and the moment in which Jesus is sentenced to be crucified are remembered in two distinct sanctuaries, from which the pilgrims can follow the footsteps of Jesus through the whole painful route, finally reaching Mount Calvary, where Jesus fulfills his mission of the salvation of man. Then going on to Bethlehem to admire the grotto of St. Jerome, the cave of the shepherds, which recalls a tent to which the angels went announcing the birth of Jesus, or reach the place of the visitation of Ain Karim. So what's the point of retracing all these sanctuaries? In all these sanctuaries, pilgrims can experience and relive the mysteries of Jesus thanks to the architect Barluzzi.